Hello, friends. My name is Dr. Mark Sandoval, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I am the president of New Paradigm Ministries, where we seek to bring life to people in bondage. That's living free, improving relationships, finding purpose, and experiencing health. So we are going to be looking at information that's contained in the book, The Law of Life. And this information, I guarantee, is going to turn your world upside down. We are going to look at things from a different perspective that will help us to find purpose and meaning, that will help us to find solutions where we only saw problems before, and will really help us to understand why we function the way that we do, why do we respond and react the way that we do, why is it that we end up with disease, why is it that we have relationship problems, why is it that we struggle with personal mental health challenges and so on, and bringing this all together into an understanding, a paradigm that helps us to come to freedom. The Law of Life, if you're not familiar with it, there's a book, there's a video series on this station. The Law of Life is a concept that is a biblical concept, but it's not well understood. And that concept, when you understand it, it takes your world and turns it upside down. And then you begin to see things in a different way, and you're like, oh, wow. I never saw it that way. And because you never saw it that way, you never looked for a solution in that way. But now you begin to find solutions where you only found problems before. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to The Law of Life. And again, my name is Dr. Mark Sandoval, and I'm excited to continue sharing with you these wonderful principles that are going to serve to set you and I free from the things that we're bound to. Now, picking up where we left off from last session, we recognize that we have various different basic needs, right? We have needs that the cells have in order to function, including raw materials or chemicals and energy, right? And those raw materials include things like oxygen, water, food, warmth, sunshine, sleep, right? And sleep is kind of it's in between there, and that's why it's kind of in that grayish zone, because there are chemicals associated with sleep, but then there are energy components that are associated with sleep as well. And with everything that we need, every basic chemical, basic raw material, basic energy need that we have, there's got to be some kind of delivery pathway. There's got to be some way of getting it from outside and bringing it in. So what is the delivery pathway for oxygen to get it into the body? Well, it's the lungs. It's the respiratory system. What's the delivery pathway for the water to be able to get into the system? Well, it's the digestive tract, and we'll just represent it by saying the stomach. And the food, the stomach as well. And what about warmth? Well, that's going to be through the skin. And sunshine, that's going to be through the eyes or the skin. Sleep, that's going to be with the brain as well. And each of these things must then be, it comes in through a particular organ or a particular organ system, and then it must get to all of the other cells of the body. So how is it going to get to all of the other cells of the body? Well, it's going to do so through the blood. Right? The blood is going to be the transport mechanism, or the lymphatic system. It's going to be the transport mechanism for the various different chemicals, the different raw materials, to be able to get it to the various different parts of the body so each of the cells can live. And that's important. But how is the energy? Where's the electricity going to come from? Where does the energy come from? What's that pathway? It's the nerves. That's right. Now, not only do you have your basic needs, not only do you have a delivery pathway, but there also has to be an action by that pathway in order to bring in that which you need. So what is the action of the lungs or the respiratory tract that brings in the oxygen that you need? Well, it's breathing, of course. And what is the action of the stomach or the digestive tract that brings in the water that you need? It's drinking. And what's the action of the digestive tract or the stomach to bring in the food that you need? Well, it's eating. What's the action that brings in the warmth or keeps in the warmth or lets it out? Well, it's either exposing the skin or it's covering the skin. That's what's going to help with controlling that warmth, right? And what's going to control the sunshine? Well, that's going to be opening your eyes. That's going to be exposing your skin to the sunlight and so on. If you go out and you don't expose, well, it's not going to help you much. And then when it comes to sleep, well, what do? You close your eyes, you stay still, you get in a comfortable position, and you wait, right? Now, what was it that we need? We need something beyond just oxygen, water, food, warmth, and sunshine, and sleep. We also need love. That's right. And love is it's going to be communicated through the mind, through the nerves, to the different parts of the body in the form of that power, that energy, that electrical activity that comes. Now, it's not the electrical activity. It's not the electrical activity. That's electrical activity through the nervous system. But it's the power behind that electrical activity for it to function the way that it's supposed to. And what is the action that then controls that love to bring it in from the outside? Well, as we said before, it's thinking. It's through one's thinking that love is brought in. Again, the love letter. You read the love letter and you interpret it as love. You accept it. It then becomes a part of you. What's the delivery pathway? What is it that the love comes into the body through? Now, love doesn't, how many atoms does love have in it? And what's its molecular weight? What's its chemical formula? What does it smell like? What's its density? And so on. Well, it doesn't have it because it's not physical, right? Love is not something that is physical. It can have physical manifestations, but love itself in its origin is not physical. It's something that's spiritual. And so it must come in through a pathway that is spiritual as well. And so that comes in through the mind. Right? It comes in through the mind, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit, is a little bit more than just the brain. Right? The mind is a little bit more than just the brain. So with everything that you need, the oxygen, water, food, so on and so forth, can you make the things that you need? In other words, can you create the oxygen that you need to breathe, that your lungs need to breathe, to bring into you for you to live by? Well, no, of course not. You can't. I mean, you can bottle it up and you can, if you want to go scuba diving, you can get a pressurizer and you can take it from the environment and you can put it in there and you can have it under high pressure and concentration and so on. You can put it on a bottle on your back and have a regulator and you go scuba diving and take it with you, but you can't create it. You can't just take it from nothing and then there it is. Can you create the water that your digestive tract needs to drink in order for you to live? Well, no, you can't. And can you create the food that your digestive tract needs to eat in order for you to live? No. Can you create the warmth that your skin needs to expose itself or cover and so on in order for you to be warm? Well, no. I mean, yes, there's fuel, there's metabolic activity, but even that fuel comes from outside of you, right? Do you create the sunshine? Yeah, of course not. And can you force or can you create sleep? No, you can only wait for it, right? If you've ever struggled with insomnia, you just can't make yourself sleep. You can only wait for it. Put yourself in the position for it, and then it comes, right? So can you create the love that your mind needs to think about in order to bring into you? Can you create that love? Well, the answer is no. Just like the other needs that you have, you can't create it either. Now, every action is good. The action in and of itself can be good. And if we have a good source to go along with that action, then it's going to turn out well. So if you breathe and you breathe air that has a good amount of oxygen in it, well, then you're going to maintain health. But if you have the same action of breathing but you put the wrong source with it, like car exhaust, carbon monoxide. Well, it's not going to work so well, right? The same action of breathing with the wrong source is going to end up with dysfunction. Now, you can have the action of drinking, which is good, and you can drink water, which is good, and that will end up with maintaining your health. But if you have the same action of drinking, and now you drink antifreeze, well, that's not going to work so well. You're going to end up dying. You're not going to maintain health. You can have the action of eating, and if you eat an apple, well, that's good. Something proper that will maintain health. But if you use the same action of eating and you eat rat poison, not going to work so well. You're not going to maintain health, right? And you can have the same action of thinking. You can have thinking that based upon good thoughts, based upon love, and so on, and by that you can maintain health. But the same action of thinking, bad thoughts, thoughts that are not consistent with love, well, that can result in death, dysfunction, and so on as well. So if you have the right action and the right source together, then you can have health. But if you have the wrong action with the right source, let's say that the right source is water, but you have the wrong action, breathing, right? If you breathe water, that's not going to work so well, right? Or you have the right source of food, but the wrong action of overeating or starvation, right? Well, then you're going to end up with disease and death. It's just not going to work well. If you have the right action of eating, but you have the wrong source, poison, right? Well, then that's going to end up with disease and death as well. And if you have the wrong action, overeating, with the wrong source, poison, well, that's just going to get you to disease and death much faster. Right? So we do need to understand what we need and why we need what we need, because when we understand our needs, that helps us to understand a lot about ourselves. Can you create that which you need? Well, we've seen already that no, you can't. You can't create the oxygen you need, the water you need, the food that you need, the sunlight that you need, and so on. It's there. You can access it. You can bring it in when it's available, but you can't create it. If you could create it, it wouldn't be a need, right? So the body cannot create what it needs. Neither can the spirit or the mind create what it needs, right? So do you need love? Well, the answer is yes, you do need love. So can you create or produce love? The answer is no. The answer is no, you can't. Because if you could, it wouldn't be a need of yours. Now, I was speaking out of country in another place, and I asked the congregation the audience this question, and there was a woman there, and she's like, yes, I can create love. I can produce love, right? It comes from me. And, we went back over these principles again, and she was still insistent that she could. And I said, okay, so let's take you, and we're going to put you in prison, and we're going to put you in solitary confinement. We'll feed you. We'll give you sunlight. We'll give you a toilet and a bed, and we'll give you water. But nobody will talk to you. Nobody will interact with you. How well are you going to do? Can you produce all the love that you need so that you're perfectly content and fine in that situation where you have all of your other needs met but love? Then she began to think about it and go, oh, yeah, maybe I can't produce love like I thought I could. So is this just our condition, or is this the condition of all humanity? This is the condition of all humanity. No human being can produce love. No human being can produce love. No human being is the source of love. Can someone else breathe for me? Of course not. If I'm suffocating here and you start hyperventilating over there, well, it's not going to help either of us. Can someone else drink for me? Well, no. If I am dehydrated and dying over here and you're over there drinking a lot of water, well, your drinking of water isn't going to help me at all, right? That's not going to help. Can someone else eat for me? Well, no, of course not. If they're starving in Africa and I'm overeating in America, is that going to help them? No, right? It's only my actions, not the actions of another, that affect my health. Now, another human being cannot be the source of that which I as a human being need, because they need the same thing too. if you use somebody else as your source of nutrition, what are you? A cannibal, right? If you go to somebody else as your source of nutrition and you try to take from them the very nutrition that they have and that they need to live by, well, you're going to kill them. And you're eventually going to run out of source and have to go to something else. And if you try to go to somebody else and wring them out all the water that they have so that you can drink and live by it, well, you kill them in the process and then you run out and you've got to move on to the next one. Can another person be my source of love? No. Another person cannot be your source of love. But when you think that they can, then you become a cannibal from a love standpoint. So let's imagine that you have a neighbor, and this neighbor comes over all the time, and they're asking for stuff, and they come and they knock on the door. And, they want some flour, and they come back again, and they knock on the door. And they want some sugar. And they come back later and they knock on the door and they want some eggs. And they come back and they knock on the door and they want a pan. And they come back and knock on the door and you get the idea they're making cake today. Right? And you're their source of cake and all the ingredients for it, right? So that's the kind of neighbor that you have. But today they come and it's the desperate knock. So you can't ignore this one. You go and you answer the door, and there they are, and they're just distraught, and oh, it's so horrible. They found out that their child has an incurable condition, and it's a fatal condition, and the doctors have given their child less than 6 months to live, and so they're putting them on hospice, and they said, whatever your bucket list is, do it now, because we don't have any treatments for this condition, and it's universally fatal. But this person has gone online and they looked all over the place and they found out that there is some center off in China that has figured out how to treat this condition, and they have a 50-50 success rate in treating this condition. But because it's China and you're not a Chinese citizen and so on, then they require payment in full up front, and it only costs $5 million for treatment. Only $5 million. So the neighbor is coming to you for $5 million. Are you going to give the neighbor $5 million? Well, why not? Cruel people. You're not going to give him $5 million? I mean, the child's going to die if you don't give him $5 million. Oh, you don't have $5 million? Oh, that's a problem, isn't it? So he's coming to you for $5 million, but you don't have $5 million. So what are you going to do? All right, so maybe you have $1,000 that you can give to him towards this goal of the $5 million. And he comes back later. And he wants the rest of the $5 million. He wants the $4,999,000. And he comes back later and he wants the rest of the $5 million. And he comes back later and he wants the rest of the $5 million. And every day, multiple times a day, he comes and he's desperately looking for the rest of the $5 million. How do you feel? Well, you feel frustrated. Why? Because you don't have what he needs. And how does he feel? Well, he feels frustrated too because you're not giving him what he needs. He thinks you have what he needs, but you don't have what he needs, and you can't provide what he needs. Everybody's frustrated. Welcome to relationships. Welcome to relationships. One person thinks that the other person has what they need. And so they go to that other person to get what they need, but that person can't supply what they need. And so they're going there and they're disappointed because they can't get everything that they need. And they're disappointed because they know that they're disappointed and they think that they should be able to supply their needs. And so they're not, this person's not happy, and so they're not happy that they're not happy, and nobody's happy. Why? Because we're going to the wrong place. We have the wrong expectations, and everything falls apart. Whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with oxygen? It's mine. I have to breathe. Whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with water? It's mine. I got to drink. And whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with proper nutrients? Well, it's mine. I have to select it and I have to eat it. So have you ever felt empty or even partially empty when it comes to love? Well, yes. You're human. You're going to answer yes. So whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with love? Well, Well, if you're religious, you might say, well, it's God's responsibility. Is it? Is it his responsibility? Or is it mine? It's mine. It's mine. If it was God's responsibility, we're told that he does all things well. How often does he do all things well? Well, he does all things well all the time. So if it was God's responsibility to fill us with love, then we would be completely full all the time. If you were ever less than 100% full of love at any time in your life, that in and of itself is evidence it's not God's responsibility or anybody else's responsibility to fill you with love. It's your own to take what you need so that you can be full. So let's imagine that you've been fasting. Maybe you went on a week-long fast, 2-week fast or something like that, and you are just hungry, and it's time to break that fast. And there's this restaurant in town, and it's a beautiful buffet, and it has all sorts of healthy foods and healthy items, and it's got over 200 different dishes that are there. You got all sorts of salads and toppings and hors d'oeuvres and dressings and other things of that nature, and you have all sorts of specialty items, and you've got entrees, and you've got desserts. And it's all healthy. It's all healthy. And you pay at the door, of course, it's a buffet, and you grab your plate, bowl, spoon, fork, knife, tray, napkin, and you go through line, and of course you're not going to choose yet because you want to see what you want to get, and you're like, oh, that looks good, oh, that looks good, oh, that looks good, and you're going to decide what you're going to get, and you go through and you smell it, and you can imagine how wonderful that's going to be. And then you do something curious. You leave your tray and napkin and knife, spoon, fork, plate, bowl, and you go walk outside. And you're still hungry. Who's responsible for you still being hungry? Maybe you're thinking, oh, I'm going to sue that restaurant. They didn't feed me. Oh, is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. Why? Because everybody knows it's not the restaurant's responsibility to feed you. It's the restaurant's responsibility to make the food available and to make sure that it meets certain standards. It's your responsibility to take and eat. And if you don't take and you don't eat and you're still hungry, that's your issue, not the restaurant's issue. Well, guess what? God has a restaurant. He has a buffet. It's a buffet of love. And that buffet of love has grace and security and belonging and truth and mercy and freedom and acceptance and justice and all of these good things. And it has some other things that, well, maybe we're not so excited about them, like self-sacrifice and self-denial and delayed gratification and so on, right? Sure, there's some dishes we like better and other dishes that we don't. But it's beautiful. And his buffet is open 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. It is never closed. He said in Hebrews 13 and verse 5, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And that buffet is always fully stocked. He said in Jeremiah 31:3, I have loved you with what kind of love? An everlasting love. You are never going to that buffet and somebody just took your favorite dish and cleaned it out and you don't have any left. It is an everlasting supply. You will never go to that buffet and not be able to get what you want. It's there and it's available. It's open all the time. It is always stocked. And even better than that, it's always free. Right? Isaiah 55 and verse 1. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. You have no money, come buy and eat. Yes, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. I tell you, it's not free, but it's free to you. It's expensive, but God paid the price so that you could come free anytime you want to. And if you come and you walk away from that buffet empty, whose responsibility is it? That's yours. It's not his. It's yours. But before you beat yourself up, we need to understand some more. God's buffet is not the only buffet. There are many other buffets out there on every street corner and every place that you turn. They're buffets of selfishness, and you find them in other people that are around you. And those buffets of selfishness, they have some enticing dishes like power and pleasure and popularity and possessions and position. But it comes with other stuff too, like fear and control, manipulation, and abuse and abandonment and rejection and injustice and lies and betrayal and infidelity and you name it. Ugh. You ever heard the phrase, you are what you eat? Well, yeah, you are what you eat. You know, you eat the apple, it gets broken down, gets into your system, gets circulating around, gets incorporated into the various different cells. It starts making up what you are. Well, digestion takes a while, but this stuff happens just like that. Just like that, right? If you imagine you're at home and you're having a good day and things are going well and so on, and somebody comes home and they are Mr. and Mrs. Grumpy, and they come in and they're like, "Oh, what are you looking at me like that? I can't believe you were just such a wait, just wipe that smile off your face. You're just How long is it before you're just like back again? Well, it happens just like that. Why? Well, you might have been doing good, but they came in and they just started spewing out their buffet and made it available, and guess what you did? You ate it. And immediately you've got it, and now you start spitting it right back out again. Right? You just start spitting it right back out again. So when it comes to these spiritual issues, when it comes to love, when it comes to lies, when it comes to this other stuff, it happens just like that. Now, others may provide a hurtful buffet around you. They might be in your presence. They might be grumpy. They might be mad. They might say bad things. They might do other things of that nature. But just because they're doing that does not mean that God's buffet of love has all of a sudden just disappeared and it's no longer available. No, remember, his buffet of love is available all the time. All the time. Right? All the time. So, you now have a choice. And that choice is whether you will take from God's buffet of love or whether you will take from the buffet of selfishness of others that are around you. Which one are you going to take from? Your outcome in whatever situation is not dependent upon what somebody else around you thinks or says or does. It's dependent upon which buffet you choose to take from. If you take from God's buffet, well, you'll get the good stuff that God has from his buffet of love. If you take from their buffet, well, you'll get the evil stuff that comes from their buffet. That's just how it is. That's how it goes. That's how it's going to be. Right? But, again, before you start beating yourself up, I want you to recognize humanity and human nature naturally takes from the buffet of selfishness as an automatic response. It naturally takes from there. So that is your default. Your default is to take from the buffet of selfishness. Your default is not to take from the buffet of love. There has to be an intervention, a change that happens in you by your cooperation or by your will, by which you can then take from the buffet of God's love, which has always been available, but you haven't been taking from. What is it that does the taking? It's belief. It's faith. That which you believe, that which you have faith in, is what you take. That which you trust is what you take. And so if you put your trust in people, then you're going to take from people, and you'll get what they got. And if you put your trust in God, you will take from God, and you'll get what he has. It's beautiful. It really is. So let's get back to the body and the brain and the mind and everything and how it functions. So here we have a cross-section of the brain, and the cortex is on the surface of the brain. That's kind of that blue area that I've highlighted there. And the limbic system is deeper down in the brain. And the cortex is where you have thinking and reasoning and higher brain functions. They occur there in the cortex. And it's in the cortex that the work of the nervous system begins. It's here where the electrical activity is primarily generated, that then the rest of the nervous system runs from, and the rest of the body does as well. And here's where you record much of the electrical activity of the brain, like if you use an EEG to look at the brain waves and so on, and much of it is what you're getting just right there from the cortex, right? And transmitted from the cortex down through the limbic system and then through the rest of the nervous system to the different parts of the body. Well, the limbic system is that which resides deeper in the brain, below the cortex, and is primarily involved in things like emotions, control of fight or flight response, you know, that one, and assisting in memory. And that the cortex and the limbic system have connections with the rest of the body through the wires, the axons, the nerves, right? And science claims that the electrical activity of the brain causes the thinking, right? So you have electrical activity in the structure of the brain, and the result of that is thinking. So thought is a result of electrical activity of the physical structure of the brain. But it's actually thinking that causes the electrical activity, right? Because science comes at it from an evolutionary standpoint, and it believes that the electrical activity is within the context of the neural network, the neurons and so on, of the brain that produces thought. In other words, it's the physical that creates the spiritual. But we learn in the Bible that God, who is spirit, created all that there is, including everything that's physical. God spoke and it was. And God is spirit. That's what Jesus said. And Jesus said that the words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. And we're told in John chapter 1 that it was Jesus, who was the Word, that spoke all things into existence. And so he whose word is spirit spoke that which is spirit, and from that came everything that is physical. And so the Bible shows us that it's the spiritual that begins first, and then from that the physical comes, and it's from the spiritual that the physical is controlled. And it's the same way with us. It's from the spiritual first that the physical is controlled and operates, right? So we have a body, right? The body and the rest of our physical being that's connected to it, the brain and so on, that's the body. But are we only physical? Well, the answer is no. In Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7, we're told the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul or living being. So the dust, God added to it the breath of life, which was a living being. And so the dust corresponds to the body, the breath to the spirit, and the living being is the soul. All right. So what do you have? Well, you have two components that come together to form a functional unit, just like you have software that comes together to form and hardware that comes together to form a computer that functions, right? And so it's almost like God married the dust and the body and the dust or the body with the breath and the spirit together at creation. And speaking of that kind of analogy, says, therefore man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they shall become what? One flesh, right? So when a man marries a woman, the combination of the two is not numeric, it's synergistic. Right? And numeric is 1 + 1 = 2. Synergistic is 1 + 1 = 9, right? 7 babies. So as individuals, a man and a woman cannot reproduce, but as a couple, they can. In our family, we have 6 children, so in our case, 1 + 1 = 8. The total is greater than the sum of the parts. This is synergism, or synergy. Similarly, the breath and the dust are synergistic, forming a soul, which is more than just the sum of the two parts, but the soul still involves both the body and the spirit. But the body and the spirit cannot function separately, just like you have software and hardware in a computer. If you have the hardware but no software, no function. If you got hardware but no software, no function. It's not going to function. Neither of them function on their own. But when you bring them together, now you have function. But when you bring them together, software is still software and hardware is still hardware. They still have their individual components of their function. Now, how many of you like conflict? Oh, we're going to raise our hands? No. So what is conflict anyways? Well, strong disagreement between people, groups, etc. that results in often angry arguments. So can you have conflict in just one thing? Well, the answer is no, you can't. So have you ever had a conflict with yourself? Alone? So are you made of just one component? No. We are physical and we are spiritual. Right? We're made of two components. And so there can be a conflict there. So our body, again, includes the brain and the rest of the body. It's the part that senses and interacts with the physical world around us and within us. And it's like the hardware of the computer, right? It contains all the physical components that are necessary for the whole thing to function. But the spirit is different. The spirit is the part that's the conduit of life to our physical being and imparts spiritual power. It's necessary for the physical being to function. It's like the software of the computer, right? And without the software, the hardware of the computer has little capacity. And you know, so it works from that standpoint. But the combination of the two, that's the soul. That's the soul, and it's the soul that is union of the body and the spirit. It's the soul that can think, not the spirit, not the brain. It's the soul that can think, and we call that the mind, right? It's the soul that can reason. It's the soul that can interpret. It's the soul that can understand and be aware, and so on and so forth. The soul is where the spiritual power unites with the physical body, enabling us to be living, thinking beings, and in us, the soul is located right here. And the brain. Now, you can cut off your finger, and you're still you. You can cut off your arm, and you are still you. You can cut off your leg, and you're still you. You can even cut out your heart and put somebody else's heart in its place, and you're still you. But what can you not cut off, and you still be you? That's right. Your head. That's where your soul is located. Right. All the rest of it, in one degree or another, can be replaced, but it's that nervous system that cannot be replaced, and that's where the interaction happens. Now, there are different needs. You have physical needs and you have spiritual needs. Your physical needs include things like oxygen and water, nutrients and warmth, sleep and sunshine that we've talked about before. But you have spiritual needs as well. You have needs of grace and harmony. You have needs of security and belonging. You have needs of acceptance and liberty, of righteousness, truth, and understanding. And all of these are various different components of love. That's what you need. You need love spiritually. Right? So whose needs are greater? The needs of your spiritual needs or your physical needs? Which needs are greater, the spiritual needs or the physical needs? Well, let's just take a look at an example. Fasting. When you're fasting, what is your body saying? Well, it's saying, give me food. I need food. And what is your mind, what is your spiritual nature saying back? Well, no, right? If you're going to fast, you have to say no to that. Your physical needs include food, but your spiritual needs include freedom from disease. So you might fast so that you can overcome a disease. You need freedom from pain, so fasting might relieve pain. You need freedom from suffering or social oppression, as in Gandhi's case. So those spiritual needs are greater than your physical needs, and so because of those spiritual needs, you will give up your physical needs or say no to those physical needs. There are people that have gone on fasts, starvations in prisons or other things of that nature in order to try to get freedom. And some of them have fasted to the point of death. Why? Because your need for love, your spiritual needs, are greater even than your need for life. Even than your need for life. So, whose needs are the greatest? It's the Spirit's needs. Right? It's your spiritual needs, your need of love, that is greater than your physical needs. If you don't get your spiritual need of love, then many people will give up their life because they don't see life worth living. Because life is not the object. If I take you and I put you in a room and I give you water and food and so on and so forth, but I don't interact with you and don't give you any social interactions and don't give you any love or anything like that, are you going to be okay? Would you want to continue living indefinitely in that situation? Well, no, right? Because life is not the object. If all you had was life, but you had no purpose, if all you had was life, but you had no love, would you want to continue living? And the answer for most people is no. And if you continued in that simple existence, just existing state for long enough, you would want to stop existing. Because your spiritual needs are far greater than your physical needs. Now, to understand ourselves and how we work and how we function, I want to run through an analogy, because this is going to prepare us then for the next section that we're going to go through and seek to understand about ourselves and how we function. So imagine with me of the individual in your life that you love the most, or you loved the most, and imagine that they're alive now if they aren't alive, and a special occasion is coming up. Maybe it's a birthday, maybe it's a anniversary, Christmas, something, I don't know, and you want to get them just the perfect gift. And so you think about them, you think about their personality, you think what they like and they don't like, and so on. And you go shopping online, you go shopping in the stores, you go looking around, and eventually you find the present. Oh, it's perfect. It's just perfect. They're going to love it. It's just for them. But it's expensive. It's expensive. And you're going to need to save for a while. So you save for a few months. The good thing you've been planning ahead. And you save for a few months. And after saving for a few months, you buy the present, you get it wrapped up nicely, you get a nice card to go along with it, and you're waiting for that day, that special day. And when that day comes, you knock on the door, and they open the door, and with a smile, you hand them their present, and they take it, and they throw it on the ground, they stomp on it, and they slam the door. How do you feel? Okay, yeah. Crushed, rejected, sad, disappointed, upset, angry. Okay, yeah, those are common responses that I hear from audiences. All right, different scenario. This time, you have been working for Oops for a while. And, UPS. You've been working for UPS for a while, and you enjoy your job. And you're one of those brown people. You like wearing brown clothes, driving brown vehicles, carrying brown packages, going knocking on brown doors, and so on. And you make some good money. And so one day you're on your route and you're driving along and you stop at a particular residence and you grab the package that's for that residence and you go down and you knock on the door. And the resident comes out, you hand them the brown thingy that they're supposed to sign, and they sign for their package, and you hand them their package, and they take the package, and they throw it on the ground, and they stomp on it, and they slam the door. How do you feel? Okay. All right, yeah, confused, curious, cautious. But why aren't you crushed? Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you sad? Why are your responses different between the first scenario and the second scenario? What's different? In the first scenario, you're crushed, you're rejected, you're angry, you're sad, you're whatever it is. Why? Because it's mine. It's mine. That was my present. It was purchased with my money. It represents my love. And that was my loved one. In the second scenario, why don't you respond that way? it's not mine. It's not mine. That wasn't my present. It wasn't purchased with my money. It doesn't represent my love, and that was not my loved one. I'm just doing my job. To the degree to which you believe it's yours is the degree to which you will be hurt personally. You will be upset, you will be frustrated, you will be crushed, you will feel rejected, and so on, if the gift is not treated well. But the degree to which you believe it's not mine is the degree to which none of that will be true. You will not take it personal because it's not about you. It's not about you. Now, there's another reason why we respond the way that we do in the first scenario as opposed to the second one. And that is because I didn't receive what I expected. Didn't receive what I expected. What do you mean? Well, human love gives in order to receive. Human love is an investment, right? And an investment is putting something of value in someone else so that you can get something of greater value back, right? Putting something of value in someone else so that you can get greater value back. So how do we do that? Well, you might give them flowers, but you're looking for acceptance. You might give them time, but you're looking for belonging. You might give them attention, but you're looking for more attention back, right? You give, but there's some kind of expectation of return. Now, you might say, well, no, I didn't give the gift with any expectation of return. Okay, well, if you didn't give the gift with any expectation of return, then you're not hurt by what they do with the gift because it's for them. Now, you're not hurt, let me clarify, you're not hurt for you by what they do with the gift. But you hurt for them. Because what's going on in their heart, what's going on in their life that they would treat the gift that way. And why? But no, that's not our purpose for giving gifts. We give gifts because of what we might receive in return. You expected them to thank you. You expected them to be grateful. You expected them to give you a hug or a kiss or whatever it is, depending on the relationship. Some relationships, you don't want them to kiss you. Other ones, you do, right? It just depends. But whatever your expectation is for you of what you might receive from the gift that you gave. And if you don't get that, then you're upset. Then things are happening, right? It's going downhill bad. You've heard the phrase, no strings attached, right? Well, in human love and humanity, there's no such thing as no strings attached. There's always strings attached. There are always strings attached. Let's run through a scenario. Let's say that you have a neighbor that has just moved in. You don't know the guy, but he comes over and he knocks on the door and he introduces himself. My name's Fred, and just moved to the neighborhood, coming to meet the neighbors, and so on, a little chit-chat and whatever. And he says, here, and he hands you a $20 bill. And he says, use this for whatever you want to. And he goes and walks away. Well, what are you thinking about Fred and his $20 gift? All right. Next scenario. Fred comes and moves into the neighborhood. You've never met him before. It's the first time. He comes up to the door, knocks on the door, and he introduces himself. Hi, I'm Fred. Just moved in the area. You have some chit-chat. And he hands you a suitcase. And he says, here, use this for whatever you want to. And he walks away. And you get the suitcase and you open it up, and it's full of $100 bills. Now, what are you thinking about Fred and his suitcase and his money and the gift that he gave? What are you thinking? Right? If you had the option between the $20 bill or the suitcase of $100 bills, which one would you take? From Fred, who you don't know. And why? Why would you take one or the other? Some people say, I wouldn't take either. I wouldn't take the $20 bill, and I wouldn't take the suitcase. I have other people that tell me, well, I'll take the $20 bill. I won't take the suitcase. And I have other people that are like, I'll take the suitcase, please. Right? Why those responses? Why would anybody not take the suitcase that's full of money? Because we know We know the bigger the gift, the bigger the string, and the harder they'll pull. There are expectations that come, and the bigger the gift, the bigger the pull that can come later. And we don't want the obligation that comes with the gift, because we know from human nature that to receive a gift makes us obligated to the one who gave it. And so we're reluctant to accept the gifts because of the perceived obligation associated with them. You know we treat God the same way. We're reluctant to receive the bigger gifts from him because we believe that his gifts come with strings attached. Yeah, we believe that his gifts come with strings attached. Does God invest in his children? Does he invest in his children? The answer is no. God does not invest in his children. Now you might be going, hang on, wait, I thought God invested. No, God does not invest in his children. And if you want to find out why it is and what's the reason behind God not investing in his children, next presentation we're going to cover that. Right? But with our gifts, human beings, we give with an expectation of return, and our expectations determine how much return is necessary in order for us to be satisfied with our investment. So expectations are really important when it comes to human love and when it comes to the return. And so next time, as we go in deeper, we're going to go deeper next time. Next time, as we go deeper and we start looking at the heart and how the heart functions, we're going to come to understand why we do what we do. Why do we respond the way that we do? Why do other people respond the way that they do? Why is it that we have this chaos that's going on? Why is it that God doesn't invest in his children? What does he do? And so on. We're going to answer all of these questions in the next session when we look at the heart and how the heart functions. And so stick with us for that, because we've got to go deeper. We've got to understand. We've got to see what things are like. If we don't see it, we're just going to be stuck, and we're never going to be able to get out of it. Do you want to be free? Yes, you want to be free. And if you want to be free, you need to know these things. So come back, watch the next session. It's going to be important in the process of you going free. Again, my name is Dr. Mark Sandoval. This is The Law of Life. It's a pleasure to be able to share this with you, and I want to walk with you to freedom, and it's my pleasure to be able to do so.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. It puts my feet on solid ground. I once was lost, but you found me. It's your amazing grace that sets me free. Amazing grace, amazing grace, how sweet the sound. It puts my feet on solid ground. I once was lost, but you found me. It's your amazing